Hi everybody, welcome to the GenAI Nerd channel, and in this video I want to show you how we can today leverage skills in Claude to help us to further reduce the risk of hallucination. And in this video I will actually first of all briefly explain why we are still facing the risk of hallucination despite the fact that today we have very good large language models. And to do so I will make a distinction between retrieval and inference. And next I will show you how we can build a skill to make sure that large language models stay working in a retrieval mode and not jump towards an inference mode, which actually is a very important cause for hallucination nowadays. So let's get started. Yes, so when we talk about hallucination today, it mainly means that still large language models sometimes have the tendency to not just provide facts, but kind of make up information by predicting the next word in a sentence. And in order to explain why hallucination still happens, we need to explain the distinction between the retrieval mode and the inference mode of large language models. So let me briefly explain that. Yeah, so when large language models do retrieval, it actually means they simply go to the web or they go to documents that you have provided and they will look for the most relevant parts in the text that they can use to answer your prompt. And actually in the retrieval mode, they really do a copy pasting of text from the internet and documents. And in that way, when they are able to retrieve relevant information, the risk of hallucination is actually very low. However, large language models also have another mode of working, and it's the inference mode. And here, actually, large language models will just try to give you an answer by predicting the next word in a sentence. So they simply predict what is the next word in a sentence without caring whether that next word is the most accurate word. And what we see is that still today, even the most advanced models, when they are not able to give you an answer using the retrieval mode, they will still try to please you and they will then jump to an inference mode to still give you an answer. And in that way, we might get output where we think it has retrieved that information from the internet or documents, but where it actually has made up that information by using an inference mode. So when we use large language models to really want to get factual information, we actually need to push it to stay in retrieval mode and don't jump to inference mode. And there we actually prefer that when it cannot retrieve information, that it will honestly admit that it doesn't retrieve information instead of going to an inference mode and then make up an answer. And so now let me show you how we can actually build a skill to accomplish this particular goal. Yeah, so here I'm in my Claude environment and I'm actually in the chat part of Claude. And to build a skill, we can simply ask Claude to create a skill. And here, what do I ask? I ask it to create a conservative retriever skill that acts like a conservative retrievalist. And what I want to do with this prompt is to push it to create a skill that will push the large language model to always use retrieval mode and not jump to inference mode when it cannot retrieve information. So I want it to be very conservative, and when it cannot provide information based on the retrieval mode, it should admit that instead of making up an answer using the inference mode. And so by using this prompt, it has created for me the skill, and then you can save that skill to your skills. So you can use this prompt, but I will also add to the YouTube descriptions a link to a GitHub repository where you can also download a skill if you want to use it. So this is the simple thing we need to do to build a skill to help us to reduce hallucination. And now let me briefly demonstrate how you can use that skill. Yeah, so here is an example where it actually makes sense to use this kind of conservative retriever skill. And so here I want to get actually the market size of conference management apps in Germany. And this is a typical example where when by means of retrieval, the large language model cannot find an information, that it would start kind of making up an answer using inference, and then you might start using data that are actually simply based on predicting the next word in a sentence, which of course you would not want. And so this is typically an example where I want it to stay in retrieval mode and also admit if it cannot find information. And so here what I simply do, I asked it to retrieve data on the market size of conference management apps in Germany. And then I explicitly mentioned my skill that I have built. And then indeed, Claude will activate that skill. It will read the instructions of that skill and then will apply that skill. And so now we can see that it explicitly said, look, this is the information that I was able to retrieve. And so it's retrieved some information on global conference management. And if we go down, then indeed it honestly admits what it has not found. Yeah, so it says, look, I was not able to find specific market sizes in terms of data. And so that in that case, I know, okay, it was not able to retrieve data, and it also didn't start really inferring a kind of fake answer. And so I hope this shows how with this kind of easy skill, you can actually drastically reduce the risk of hallucinated information, because now you will get a rather conservative answer. That, of course, also means that often you will now get the answer, I cannot give you information, I cannot answer it. But for a lot of use cases, it's actually better that it honestly admits that it cannot retrieve information than giving you a fake answer. So I hope this can be helpful. Thanks for your attention. Bye.